All right. So we're back again with another installment of Practical Knowledge. I want to give thanks to the Most High in the name of Yahushai. Barakatah Yahweh Yahushai. Today we'll be discussing, as you've seen in the intro, we will be discussing the Herodian Dynasty, Herod the Great, his descendants, those who pertain to the scriptures and their involvement in the Bible. So we're going to talk about Herod, his sons, his grandchildren, his granddaughters, things of that nature. Why does that matter? Who is Herod the Great? Ask yourself if you're familiar with Herod the Great, right? Ask yourself if you know the time period of which Jesus Christ, our King Yahushua Mashiach, lived on the earth. You see? Do you understand the time period? That's what I want to dive into. That way, when you read on your own, you understand the context, the geographic context, the agriculture context, the historical context. Who was the emperor at the time? Who was the superpower of the earth? Rome. What was the state of the children of Israel at this time? So much more. That's why I do these practical knowledge breakdowns. And this ties into the Revelation breakdowns. This is like a sub series of the Revelation breakdown series to help further explain the time is so important. Here is a bust of Herod the Great. We're going to talk a little bit about him. Now, dealing with these historical figures who are mentioned in the scriptures, I study not only their role in the scriptures and what they did in the scriptures, I like to study their outside life. You know, when I say outside life, what they did outside of the Bible. It really doesn't matter, but it does, right? Depending on the topic. For example, the year he was born. According to historians, they agree anywhere from 74 to 72 BC is the birth of who we know as Herod the Great, son of Antipater the Idumean. You see, and we'll explain all of that today. We got some good information, some stuff you're gonna be like, wow, I didn't recognize that. And it's because a lot of times the history that Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John included in our records, we have to go into books such as Josephus, Zondervan's Compact Bible Dictionary, and other historical references, accurate references that pair with the scriptures and paint the picture so you can see it. We just did a breakdown on the tabernacle of Moses, where I showed you, like in the beginning of this video, I showed you what's known as Herod's temple, right? You had Solomon's temple. Okay, here we go. You had the tabernacle of Moses. It's referred to as the tabernacle of Moses, or the sanctuary of the Most High. We broke that down. We broke down how that was almost like a prototype for Solomon's temple, where we wouldn't be nomadic anymore. We're established in the land under the rule of Solomon, where we have peace for 40 years. Mind you, Solomon's name means peace, and that was, the case during his reign. We had peace during his reign. Salakia. What else? That's a little sidebar. Because those names mean something. After Solomon, Israel's going off, of course. The years later, the king Zedekiah, who was placed as king by the Babylonians in Nebuchadnezzar, made Zedekiah king and made him pay tributes to Nebuchadnezzar. Long story short, Zedekiah refused to continue to pay tribute to Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar laid siege on Jerusalem. That was one of the multiple sieges of Jerusalem in history. And then years later, after the Babylonians are, brought down and sat down in the dust, the Persians and the Medes came into power, as prophesied by Isaiah and Daniel and other prophets in the scriptures. And brothers such as Ezra, Nehemiah, Zerubbabel, Joshua, the high priest at the time, so a few other names I'm not mentioning, but they rebuilt the temple, right? Then years later, the temple was defiled again during the Maccabean revolt. We just celebrated the Feast of Dedication, otherwise known as Hanukkah. It was rededicated. And then again, years later, about 100 some odd years later, Herod the Great comes into play, where he kind of attempts to extend the temple, right? And he defiled it. He had, like, according to the Josephus, Roman symbolism, like in the gates and eagles. There was an account where you have brothers that knocked down the eagle, according to history. This big eagle bust in the entrance gate of the temple, all kind of stuff. So that was the time we was dealing with. Now, who is Herod the Great? Herod the Great was first a governor over Galilee earlier in his life. Remember, this is during a time where Rome is over Israel. Like, Israel isn't doing their own thing. We're paying taxes to Rome, right? We're subjugated to their rule and power and authority, as prophesied by Daniel. So we're looking at anywhere from 47 BC to 37 BC. Herod extends the temple. It takes him about 10 years. Rome makes him not only governor over Galilee, he is promoted to king over. He was named King of the Jews, right? He played as like a king over Israel. He sat as a king of the Jews, a king of Judea. Rome had many provinces, many strongholds, if you will, and this was one of their clientele to watch over one of their provinces, Herod. Herod was the son of Antipater the Idumean, who was an Idumean, right? Idumea, or otherwise known as Edom, or the Edomites. You see, he was not a Jew on his father's side. Um, so he was not a Jew, right? But he was in the position of king over the Jews, right? So let's read a little bit about him in the scriptures. This is fairly accurate, this picture I have here, because he was Idumean. So let's get right into it. Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 through 2. Basically, I want to show you, the purpose of this video is to show you all the Herods in the scriptures. There's a lot of Herods, but however, the Herods in the Bible, I want to help you understand context, because the Herod the Great in Matthew 2 is not Herod who was lusting after his daughter-in-law. That's not the same Herod. This is not Herod Agrippa the second that was talking to Paul in different trials. That's not the same Herod. However, they are his sons and grandsons, and I think it's important for us to understand the context. Who was who? What year? What time period? I need to know. You know, it's not gonna make or break you get on a chariot. However, I need to know. So those of you who feel like you need to know, let's know. You see, Matthew 2 and 1. Excuse me. Now, when Yahushua was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, this is Herod the Great. This is the first Herod. Behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born king of the Jews? It's finna get so heavy. Salakia. For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. Everyone is familiar with, they say the three wise men. As you see here, it does not say the three wise men. It just says wise men. Could have been 3, could have been 5, it could have been 20. The point is, there were wise men. Wise in what? Wise in the prophecies concerning the birth of Christ and what it means to the children of Israel being liberated from Roman oppression and oppression in general, right? Also, the scripture that that pinpoints, we'll keep reading. Matthew 2 and 3. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Why is Herod the king, who is a prominent figure in history? Shows you how real the Bible is. This is a real person, because the Bible is real history. Herod the king is troubled that wise men are, their word around town is the king of the Jews is born. Why is he worried about that? Because he played as king of the Jews. That's why. That's why Herod is troubled with these things. Verse 4, and when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. Right? Now, let's keep reading. And they said unto him, in Bethlehem of Judea, or Judah. Judea is Judah. For thus it is written by the prophet, and thou, Bethlehem, or Bayathlachem in Hebrew, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah. For out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule over my people Israel. Then that is Micah. That is the prophecy that's being read. I believe Micah 4 and 5 or 5 and 4. I'll put it on the screen for you. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search diligently for the young child. And when ye have found him, bring me word again that I may come and worship him also. Right? And the scriptures say that his words are smoother than butter. But war is in Herod's heart. War is in his mind. He doesn't want to pamper this child that's that's going to potentially cause uproars among the people and threaten his position as king of the Jews and the dainties that comes along with being in that position over the children of Israel, appointed to him by the Roman Empire, by the Romans. You see? Verse 9, and when they had heard the king, these wise men, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And they had opened their treasures, and they presented unto him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned of the Most High in a dream that they should not return to Herod the Great, they departed into their own country another way. Why? Why were they warned in a dream? What were they warned about? They were warned that his intentions were not good concerning this child who is the real king of the Jews. Like Christ caused problems soon as he came into the earth as a baby. You see? Like soon as he's born, people want him dead. People want him unalive. Salakia. You see? And he ain't even circumcised yet. So as you read on, you read that Herod goes on this tyrannical, evil, menacing, devious plan. And because the wise men didn't return back to where Herod is and let him know where the child who was named King of the Jews resides, he said, F it, kill all young Black, Hispanic, and Native Indian babies. Kill all the Jews, children, the young males. Kill them. And that's what he did. That's what he did. That's what this evil man did. Herod the Great. We talked a little bit about Herod the Great's involvement in the temple, right? Let me make myself a little smaller here, right? Let's read a little bit of my notes that I put together on the screen for us. The second temple replaced Solomon's temple, which is presumed to have been built at the same location before its destruction by the Babylonians in 587 BC. Construction began under the Persian king Cyrus the Great and was completed during the reign of Darius, signifying a period of renewed Jewish hope and religious revival, right, quote unquote. According to the Bible, the second temple was originally a relatively modest structure built by Jews who had returned from exile in Babylon under the authority of Persian-appointed governor Zerubbabel, the grandson of Jeconiah, the penultimate king of Judah. Zerubbabel was an Israelite. Greet Ezra, First Ezra, and Second Ezra to read a little bit more about Zerubbabel. And Zechariah was also around during this time, having visions about Joshua the high priest with dirty garments and getting clean garments, set the fair mitre upon his head. The second temple was refurbished and expanded in the 1st century BC under the reign of Herod the Great, hence his alternative name, Herod's Temple. The temple's transformation resulted in a grand and imposing structure and courtyard, including large edifices and facades shown in modern models, such as the Holy Land model of Jerusalem. The Temple Mount, the platform upon which the second temple stood, was also significantly expanded, doubling in size to become the largest religious sanctuary in the ancient world. In 70 AD, at the height of the first quote-unquote Jewish-Roman War, the second temple was destroyed by the Roman army led by Titus during the siege of Jerusalem. This is another siege of Jerusalem. The destruction of the Second Temple was a catalytic and transformative point in Israelite history, right? And I showed a little video in the beginning, what it looked like, and that's based on the history, the records that we have in history, how he expanded Solomon's temple, and it was deemed Herod's temple. It's just think of like the White House. This was like their White House, and he was the president. This is what Christ said in Matthew 24:1. And Yahushua went out and departed from the temple. Let me bring myself down here. There we go. And his disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. See, now reading this, you can see it. Like when I read, I can't read past something if I don't know what it means, or if I can't see it. I need to see it. You see? So now we know what temple? Talking about Herod's temple. And this is what Christ said in Matthew 24:2. And Yahushua said unto them, see not all these things? So Christ is teaching. First century of the Roman Empire. Height of the Roman Empire as far as power goes. And he's teaching, and he says, you see these? And he's pointing. You got brothers and sisters following him. He says, and Yahushua said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And one of the things I like to note, archaeologists and eschatologists did a lot of research on Herod's temple. They were fascinated on how, like, a lot of the stones weren't, they weren't just brick. They weren't like a brick house with, let's say 2x2 bricks, 4x4 bricks. These were 1-ton big cement blocks that made up of the wall of Herod's temple. It was huge. That's why the scribes and Pharisees, who were, I say, paid off by the Romans, who were in cahoots with Herod the Great, who were, sellouts, took such offense when Christ said these things. When Christ was on a cross, they said, is this the Son of God that will tear down the temple in 3 days? Let him get himself off the cross. Right? They remember these things that he said. You see? And when you read in the scriptures and in history, during the siege of Jerusalem, the Romans seized Israel or Jerusalem, and that temple was destroyed. And another thing I like to note is those same scribes and Pharisees who chanted, crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. Let his blood be upon us and our children and our children's children. Not even 30, 40 some odd years later, according to history, the siege of Jerusalem happened, and their blood was on their children and their children's children and them. And more importantly, that temple came down like Christ said it would. Because number one, it wasn't of the Lord. You see? All right. So now let's get a little bit more into the history, understanding the context of which Herod is who. Because not all Herods are Herod the Great in the Bible. The Herod the Great in Matthew 2 is not Herod in Matthew 14. The Herod in Matthew 14 is not the Herod in Acts 22. The Herodian Tetrarchy was a regional division of a client state of Rome formed following the death of Herod the Great in 4 BC. The latter's client kingdom was divided between his sister SHALAM and his sons Herod Archelaus, Herod Antipas, and Philip. So when Herod the Great died, his rule over all Israel was divided into 4 parts. And I'll explain who was over what. And there we go. There we go. Let me make myself a little smaller. All right. So here's a little family tree of Herod the Great. Herod the Great had Aristobulus, right? I could be butchering this. Whatever. I don't even respect these cats. Archelaus, Herod Antipas, and Philip. As you see, Aristobulus, that's how you say it. Aristobulus had a son by the name of Herod Agrippa the first, and he had a daughter by way of orphanage. That's not in the scriptures. That's a historical thing. Named Herodias. These four men were over. They played as they're tetrarchs, but in today's terms, I would say that they played as like governors in certain areas of Israel. Imagine Israel being broken up in four parts, and these men are over these parts. Really, not Aristobulus. He was unalived by Herod the Great because Herod the Great suspected him of wanting to unalive him for his position. So Herod the Great offed him and his wife. What was his wife's name? I forget his wife's name. But Archelaus, he was over the area of Bethlehem. Archelaus was over Bethlehem. That's when Joseph moved his family to the area of Galilee, right? Herod Antipas, he was over the Galilean area. So when he didn't return to Jerusalem, he went to Galilee because the angel warned him in a vision to go there. Later on, Herod Antipas ruled over that area. Remember, he didn't leave, I think, Egypt until Herod passed away, right? Or around that time, right before he died. See? Let me see here. Now, dealing with this family tree is very important. We gotta explain what happened with these four individuals to understand the next Herod I'm gonna bring up. Ride with me, right? Aristobulus, he was killed by Herod the Great, so he's not a factor. He didn't pick up any provinces, right? He didn't inherit anything. And the man responsible for dividing Herod's power was Augustus, the Roman emperor, which is where you get the month August from. August or Augustus. It's like it. Battling this cold. All right. So Herod Agrippa the first and Herodias were the son and daughter of Aristobulus. Herodias, the orphan daughter of Aristobulus, married her half uncle Herod II, or Philip. He's also known as Philip the Tetrarch. Herodias and Philip had a daughter by the name of Salome, right? Salome. Let's just say Salome, right? Herodias and Herod, follow me. And Philip II, or Philip the Tetrarch. And when you read, you'll see Herod the second, or Philip the Tetrarch. It's the same person. Herodias, which is a woman, and Philip the Tetrarch had a daughter by the name of Salome. Herodias, the woman, divorces Herod II, or Philip, and marries Herod Antipas. Philip didn't die, but after she had a child with Philip, she divorced Philip, right? And got with her brother, or got with her uncle, you see, got with her uncle, and these are Edomites. Got with her uncle, and that was disgusting. Herodias divorces Herod II, or Philip, and marries Herod Antipas. Now, the historical context will make sense when we go to Matthew 14, 1 through 10. At that time, Herod the Tetrarch, or Philip, this is Philip, right, heard of the fame of Yahushua, and said unto his servants, this is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. And Herod had laid hold on John. For Herod had laid hold on John and bound him and put him in prison for Herodias' sake. Who is that? That is the granddaughter of Herod the Great by way of orphanage. It wasn't, his son's daughter from him, right? When you go into the history. Anyways, for Herod had laid hold on John and bound him and put him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife. You see that? Salakia, Herod the Tetrarch, the first Herod the Tetrarch. This is why this is important. This is Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas, or Herod the Tetrarch, in Matthew 14, 1 through 10, is Herod Antipas, who took Herodias, who was the wife of Philip the Tetrarch. They were all tetrarchs. They all had a quarter. That's what tetrarch means, a quarter of power, which was split up among them or whatnot. Let me see here. Where am I at? I said unto him, it is not. Okay. Yeah, his brother Philip's wife, Philip the Tetrarch. His brother, his other son of Herod the Great. For John said unto him, it is not lawful for thee to have her. And when he would have put him to death, he feared the multitude, because they counted him as a prophet. But the children of Israel. But when Herod's birthday was kept, the daughter of Herodias danced before them and pleased Herod Antipas. Whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatsoever she would ask. And she, being before instructed of her mother Herodias, give me here John the Baptist's head in a charger. And the king was sorry. Nevertheless, for the oath's sake, and them which sat with him at meat, he commanded it be given her. And he sent and beheaded John in prison. Herod Antipas was so fascinated in hindsight by his niece, his brother's daughter. You see? No, I don't think you understand this. Let's go back to the family tree. Aristobulus, his son and daughter was Herod Agrippa and Herodias. Herodias' daughter from Philip is the girl Herod Antipas promised half his kingdom to, because he was lusting after her. So this is his brother's daughter's daughter. You following me? You might have to replay that once or twice. Salome, or her name is Salome, Salome. That's how I spelled tomato, with a lot of these names. Salakia. That was the daughter of Herodias, daughter of Philip. Philip's brother Herod Antipas liked her as well, but he already had took Herodias from Philip. But Herodias was also already his niece. Sick. Sick. But now you understand, right? These are little artistic depictions of her, the daughter, not Herodias, Salome, Salome. Let's just say Salome, right? Um, yeah, that's just a little imagery, right? Also, again with Herod Antipas, this is not a real picture of them. Nobody had an iPhone back then. I just like to, these were Idumeans. You see, Luke 13:31. The same day there came certain men of the Pharisees, saying unto him, Get thee out and depart hence, for Herod will kill thee. What Herod? Herod the Great? No. Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas was referred to as Luke 13:32. And he said unto them, Go ye and tell that fox, Behold, I cast out devils, and I do cures today and tomorrow, and the third day I shall be perfected. Damn. Christ knew who these dudes were. Christ knew who these guys were. Remember, this is years later. Christ ain't no baby. Christ a grown man teaching in the streets where these men are, rulers over. And Christ said, men coming up to him fearful, you got to get out of here. Herod's going to kill you. Christ said, man, you go tell that fox. You see how important that historical context is? It just brings it more, home, right? All we need is the scriptures. Don't get me wrong. All you need is the Bible, but that history is important, right? Let's look at another account where Herod Antipas tempts Christ. Luke 23:7. As soon as he knew that he belonged unto Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod. This is Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas was over Jerusalem. Or Herod Antipas was over the Galilean area. Christ did a lot of his teaching in Galilee. So Pilate, to give you understanding, Pilate was not trying to deal with this because it could cause uproars of the people, to divide amongst the people, and he just didn't want to deal with it. So he's like, I'm just going to send him to, where he comes from, who's over that. So he said, I'm going to send him to Herod Antipas. Now, Herod was in Jerusalem at the time celebrating Passover, which we'll read. Verse 8. And when Herod saw Yahushua, he was exceeding glad, for he was desirous to see him of a long season, because he had heard many things of him, and he hoped to have seen some miracle done by him. Remember, he thought this was John coming back because he had just unalived John, put his head on a platter. Then he questioned him with many words, but he answered him nothing. Christ didn't say nothing to this cat because he's sitting here telling Christ to do miracles, like Christ is some magician or a party attraction, a birthday party attraction. All right. And the chief priests and the scribes stood and vehemently accused him. And Herod with his men of war set him at naught and mocked him and arrayed him in a gorgeous robe and sent him again to Pilate. That's Herod Antipas. This is an Edomite. This is a devil. And the same day, Pilate and Herod were made friends together, for before they were at enmity between themselves, right? And then you read a little bit more how Christ was sent back to Pilate, and then, the whole trial, and everything, and, Barabbas and the whole nine. Then there was another Herod by the name of Herod Agrippa the first. There's a second. Acts 12:1. This Herod Agrippa, the son of Aristobulus. Let's go back here. In Acts 12:1. This is Herod Agrippa, grandson of Herod the Great. Now about that time, Herod the king stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the school, and he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. And because he saw it pleased the Jews, the wicked of them, he proceeded further to take Peter also. Peter was thrown into prison where he was supposed to await death row, but an angel freed him from prison. Herod Agrippa had a disciple of Christ killed. But let's read a little bit more about Herod Agrippa the first, Acts 12:20. When Herod was displeased with them of Tyre and Zidon, but they came with one accord to him, and having made Blastus the king's chamberlain their friend, desired peace, because their country was nourished by the king's country. And upon a set day, Herod, arrayed in royal apparel, sat upon his throne and made an oration unto them, right, to the people. And the people gave a shout, saying, "It is the voice of God and not of a man." Our people are so lost. Our people are so lost. And immediately the angel of the Lord smote him, because he gave not God the glory, and he was eaten of worms and gave up the ghost. You know, some historians speculate, say he dropped dead of a heart attack, or he had a disease he was fighting, and when this happened, the Lord allowed it to consume him. Either way, you read the text, and that's what it is. The people, looked at this man as a god, right? Because of his position and rule over them. And our people were so weak. This is why the Lord allowed the siege of Jerusalem, because we were being so weak. And mind you, these are Idumeans. This was a cat that, because he had black or Hispanic mothers in his family tree, going back into the history, he probably was like a Barack Obama. We looked up to him, but he's not even us. It's the same thing with Herod the Great and his descendants. And you had sellouts amongst the scribes and Pharisees and people in positions of power who were loyal to Rome and not the Lord. And things like this happen, you see. And I want to state one more thing. Dealing with history, you'll see dates like, some historians will say Christ was born anywhere from 6 to 4 BC. Things like that I don't get tied up into. When it comes to teaching history, a lot of times you have to, if it's not in the Bible, you have to say according to historians. You see, but the Bible tells you about Herod the Great, but it doesn't say which Herod is which, and a lot of times. And I just wanted to, in this video, shed a little light on that, and I hope you understand now the context of who is who and the family history. You got to really write it down, study it. The scriptures say in Timothy's, study to show thyself approved, or a workman needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. You see, so that's going to do it. This was another installment of Practical Knowledge, Israelite School U.P.K, under Commanding General Yahanna. This was the Herodian Dynasty. The only ones I focused on were the ones in the Bible. All the other Herods don't matter. It don't matter. Not in this context. You can study it. It's good to study it. You should study it. But the ones in the script, they're not mentioned in the scriptures. I only focused on the ones mentioned in the Bible. You see. So with that, I want to say shalom.